telling you, no cameras have been in Imperial courts the way we were. And in the jungle, they have a policy of no cameras, totally.
The person in charge of that movie made a lot of mistakes.
American Me.
Yeah.
We remember that famous scene in Training Day in Imperial Courts.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they filmed that out there?
Hell yeah, man. I was a little kid. First of all, y'all just can't come over here without, involving our hood.
Watching a Hollywood movie is one thing, but what really goes down behind the scenes is a whole different ballgame. Forget the glitz and glam. Making a movie can mean surviving chaos, and it gets wild when a film crew ends up in the wrong neighborhood.
He wanted to really be, hardcore. And I said, I think I can get you guys there, but it's gonna be real dirty. So if the crew's willing to get a little dirty to make a dirty movie, we can make it happen.
We're talking gangsters crashing sets, mafias taking over productions, local gangs demanding their due respect, and directors getting death threats. Some people even paid the ultimate price just for being part of these projects. Let's dive into the madness. For those who know, Training Day, starring Denzel Washington, has become a fan favorite, with some calling it Denzel's best work to date. Released on October 5th, 2001 by Warner Brothers Pictures, the movie was a hit with critics, who praised the powerhouse performances from both Washington and Ethan Hawke. The film racked up plenty of awards and nominations, including Washington snagging the Academy Award for Best Actor and Hawke earning a nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the 74th Academy Awards. To make Training Day feel as gritty and authentic as it does, director Antoine Fuqua decided to shoot in some of Los Angeles' most notorious neighborhoods.
There's no other way to tell the story unless you understand the world they're in. I wanted the whole crew to get in the environment, see the people, to see what the movie's about, to feel the texture of the world.
This was no walk in the park. According to Klee Shahid Sloan, the film's gang technical advisor, when Fuqua mentioned his plans, Sloan gave him a heads up. If they wanted to film in these areas, they'd have to get their hands dirty, literally.
He wanted this film to really be authentic. He wanted to really be, hardcore. And I said, I think I can get you guys there, but it's gonna be real dirty. So if the crew's willing to get a little dirty to make a dirty movie, we can make it happen.
Some neighborhoods even had strict no cameras policies, which meant filming there required jumping through serious hoops.
I'm telling you, no cameras have been in Imperial courts the way we were. And in the jungle, they have a policy of no cameras. Totally.
One of the biggest hurdles, Denzel Washington himself had to meet with the Crips set of that neighborhood to get their approval before the crew could even think about setting up in their territory. Denzel and Fuqua sat down with the gang, showed them the movie trailer, and even hired some of their members to be part of the shoot to ensure everything went smoothly.
We remember that famous scene in Training Day in Imperial Courts.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they filmed that out there?
Hell yeah, man. I was a little kid. First of all, y'all just can't come over here without, involving our hood. Denzel came over there and he grabbed a group of guys and hired them. Got the homies to watch the trailers and like that, and then we just got in good. But far as
a police officer later remarked that the filming locations were so intense, it was like living out a movie in real life.
Have you ever seen the movie Training Day? The very end where they're in that cul-de-sac, that's where I did my probation. So it's called the Southwest Division. I did my probation there for a year. Really crazy stuff that I only would see in movies type.
Thanks to Sloan's connections, the crew managed to secure permission to shoot in the Imperial Courts housing project, making it the first time LA street gangs allowed a film crew into that area. The team also filmed in other infamous spots like Hoover Block, Baldwin Village, and a dead-end street called Palmwood Drive, where members of the Black Peace Stones Blood Gang were spotted on rooftops. While Training Day wrapped up without any major consequences, not every production has been so lucky. The next story takes us to a set where things didn't go quite as smoothly, and that is American Me. Danny Trejo, who knows the streets and prison life better than most, once said, "Those of us who had done serious time on the streets and in prisons knew threats from prominent gangs could and should never be dismissed." Sadly, those words came too late for the people behind one particular movie, and the fallout was deadly. In 1992, Edward James Olmos made his directorial debut with American Me, a crime drama that explored the harsh realities of Mexican street gangs.
The way it has always been.
The movie turned heads in Hollywood, but it also caught the attention of some very dangerous people. Joe Morgan, a leader of the Mexican Mafia, wasn't happy with how the film portrayed his organization, or with some inaccuracies in the story. And when the mafia doesn't like something, they have a way of making their feelings known. Morgan sent a warning to Olmos through Danny Trejo, who was offered a role in the movie. Trejo, knowing how serious this was, passed on the message, but Olmos refused to back down. He stuck to his vision, even though it meant upsetting one of the most feared crime syndicates in the world.
The person in charge of that movie made a lot of mistakes.
American Me.
Yeah.
Edward James Olmos.
Yeah, I told him out front, you can't do this, Holmes. You can't do this. You're offending some very. He said, well, it's theatrical.
The mafia wasn't bluffing. The aftermath was chilling, with over 10 people losing their lives because of American Me.
From what I understand, some of the people featured in that movie, like I think, like got killed because of them being in that movie.
Among them was Charlie Brown Manriquez, a former mafia member who worked as a consultant on the film. He was shot in his home. Ana the gang lady Lizarraga, another consultant, was also offed. Manuel Rocky Luna, a former gang member who provided expertise, was gunned down in his car. Even Olmos himself began receiving death threats. The most controversial scene, which many believe sparked the violence, showed Montoya Santana, loosely based on real-life mafia leader Rodolfo Cadena, being assaulted in prison. According to Trejo, Olmos claimed to have gotten permission to include the scene, but it turned out he hadn't, and the mafia saw it as a massive insult.
From what I heard, the big problem in that movie was that he showed that guy getting
That was one of them.
in juvenile hall, and that's considered the biggest no-no.
Right. And then he lied about getting permission to do it.
Aha.
He said he went up to talk to Joe Morgan.
Joe Morgan is the guy?
Yeah, Joe Morgan told me, no, he didn't. He told me on the phone, no, he didn't.
In his memoir, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Hollywood, and Redemption, Trejo reflected on the tragic events, saying, "Producers in Hollywood don't always understand the nature of the people they are representing. And in this case, that lack of understanding came at a deadly price."
Power of cinema, you gotta be really careful.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. And I don't mean, am I offending somebody? No, you just gotta be real careful about telling the truth.
And then there was Straight Outta Compton.
Some police think they have the authority to minority. That shit, 'cause I ain't.
The iconic biopic that takes us through the meteoric rise of NWA, the rap group that redefined music and culture at a time when rap was not mainstream. The movie earned rave reviews for its performances, direction, and electrifying musical sequences. Sure, some people called out the historical inaccuracies, but it didn't stop the film from being a massive success, raking in over $201 million on a budget of just $28 to $50 million. Not bad for a movie about shaking up the system. But behind the scenes, things weren't exactly smooth sailing. The production was hit with controversies left and right, everything from casting drama to on-set violence. In the end, one person lost their life, a drive-by shooting shook the crew, and actual gang members had to be brought in as security to keep things from getting even worse. One memorable day in September 2014 saw the cameras rolling in the parking lot of the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. The set was buzzing as actors playing conservative protesters waved signs like "Crap Rap NWA" and crushed records with a steamroller. Meanwhile, extras, most too young to remember NWA's heyday, lined up to shoot a concert scene.
For those who know the song, raise your hand. Okay, so I say about half the crowd. The other half who needs to hear it a couple times, raise your hand.
The production nailed the late 80s vibe, complete with a retro tour bus, a vintage TV news van, and extras decked out in throwback hairstyles and chunky gold dookie rope chains. Dr. Dre stayed mostly in his plush trailer, while Tamika Woods Wright, Eazy-E's widow and a producer on the film, kept a low profile. Still, there were plenty of celebrity sightings. Director F. Gary Gray, who teamed up with Ice Cube on Friday, paced around, focused on his notes. Ice Cube himself, rocking his signature shades, casually walked the set, while his son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., who played his dad in the film, prepped for a scene. When a reporter asked for a photo, Jackson Jr., sporting a Jerry curl wig, laughed and said, "Not while I'm wearing this." Of course, casting for the film sparked plenty of chatter, with some people crying nepotism. Even Jimmy Kimmel poked fun, asking Ice Cube if his son had to audition to play him.
So when I told him, I said, I want my son to play me, he almost lost it.
Yeah.
He was like, "Cube, damn, man, I thought we was making a real movie. What you mean? I said, dude, I would not put him in this position if I didn't think he could do it.
Turns out he did, and it worked out well for him. But not everyone landed their dream role. Dr. Dre's eldest son, Curtis, auditioned but didn't make the cut, and Eazy-E's son, Lil Eazy-E, also tried out but wasn't chosen. It seems talent, not just legacy, was the deciding factor on this set. TMZ reported that Lil Eazy wasn't thrilled about missing out on the role of his father in Straight Outta Compton, but he later denied any hard feelings. Instead, he said he actually helped Jason Mitchell, the actor who got the part, by coaching him. Mitchell even visited Lil Eazy at his childhood home in Compton, where Eazy-E himself had lived, to get tips on portraying the legendary rapper authentically. But while some moments behind the scenes were collaborative, others were anything but. To keep things as real as possible, the filmmakers shot in Compton, a decision that came with serious risks. Old gang rivalries were reignited, tensions ran high, and tragically, one man lost his life. Negotiating with local gangs became a necessity to keep the peace, and the looming threat of violence gave the production an edge of danger that mirrored the gritty history of West Coast hip-hop. To help navigate the chaos, the filmmakers brought in Clee Bone Sloan, a Bloods affiliate with experience on films like Training Day. Bone's job wasn't just about keeping the scenes authentic. It also involved recruiting local gang members as extras and providing security in gang-controlled areas. But this decision had unintended consequences. Bone had a long-standing beef with Suge Knight, the infamous Death Row Records founder, and keeping Knight off the set was one of his unofficial duties. The bad blood boiled over in January 2015. After filming a promotional spot at a Compton barbershop, the crew broke for lunch near North Bullis Road, a Piru gang area. That's when Suge Knight showed up in his red Ford F-150 Raptor, catching everyone off guard. According to Bone, Knight approached calmly, telling Ice Cube's head of security, Kibo, "I come in peace. I didn't come to start problems." He even asked for a meeting with Cube, saying it didn't have to happen that day. Kibo reportedly reassured Knight that his payment for being portrayed in the movie would arrive soon, but before anything could be resolved, Bone arrived. Things quickly escalated into a heated argument, and the tension only grew when the sheriffs intervened and Knight drove off. Later, Knight got a call from Terry Carter, a local businessman and mediator, who offered to help smooth things over. They met near Tam's Burgers, talking through their car windows. But Bone followed Knight there, jumped a fence, and started punching Knight through his truck window. In the chaos, Knight hit the gas, running over Bone's ankles and accidentally striking Carter, who had stepped out of his car. Tragically, Carter didn't survive.
Where Knight's truck apparently runs over the two men. The truck backs up, hits one man. Seconds later, the truck comes back and runs.
The fallout was massive. Terry Carter's widow filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Universal Studios, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Tam's Burgers, and more. She claimed they should have known the volatile mix of Bone and Knight could lead to violence. Meanwhile, Knight allegedly issued threats to the film's director, F. Gary Gray, over his portrayal in the movie.
Yeah, this is yet another charge for Suge Knight related to the movie Straight Outta Compton. This time, he is accused of texting a death threat to the movie's director.
Gray later testified that he couldn't recall any threatening calls or texts, but some believed he stayed silent out of fear. Prosecutors accused him of lying to protect himself. The production also found itself in hot water over a casting call controversy. A memo categorizing actresses by their looks and skin tone caused outrage, with descriptions like, "A girls as the hottest and lightest skinned, while D girls were described as out of shape and darker skinned." The backlash was swift, adding yet another scandal to an already fraught production. So, back in the 1990s, every time one of these intense, raw, and gritty movies hit the big screen, it was like a magnet for street gangs and anyone tied to that lifestyle. With so few theaters around, everyone, friends, rivals, and enemies, ended up crammed into the same spots. And, well, you can guess how that played out. These were some of the wildest, most chaotic nights you could imagine, with gang tensions exploding right outside the theaters, turning an evening at the movies into a scene.
Ricky! Good evening. A Chicago man was killed and 20 other people were wounded in disturbances around the country last night. Disturbances linked to the opening of a movie called Boys in the Hood.
Take Boys and the Hood, for example. It's July 14th, 1991, and 23-year-old John Singleton, with all the passion and raw talent you could pack into one young filmmaker, drops his debut film, this masterpiece that dives deep into life in gang-heavy South Central LA. It's got a stellar cast: Cuba Gooding Jr., Ice Cube, Angela Bassett, Lawrence Fishburne, and Morris Chestnut. The movie ends with this powerful gut-punch message on the screen: increase the peace. A simple, desperate plea to calm the madness gripping LA's 800-plus gangs, and a sharp side-eye to the LAPD, which the movie calls out for racial profiling and harassment. But even with that plea for peace, the release night was anything but peaceful. Singleton spent his big night moving from theater to theater around LA, doing what directors sometimes love to do, slipping in unnoticed to soak up the audience's reactions. But right after he left the Cineplex Odeon near downtown LA, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out. 5 people were hit. One moviegoer, just 19 years old, described it as absolute madness. The lights went down, the screen came on, and then all hell broke loose. There was gunfire, people chasing each other all over the place. Another attendee said, people were stampeding, running for the bathrooms, anywhere to get out. And it wasn't just an LA thing. The violence followed the movie wherever it played, spilling into places you'd expect, like gang-heavy areas near theaters in Universal City or Chino, but also hitting completely unexpected places: San Francisco, Minneapolis, Tuscaloosa, and even quiet towns like New Springfield, Massachusetts. In all, there were reports of violence at 20 out of the 900 theaters showing the film, proving just how charged those nights really were. Take Jersey City, for example. Things got heated before a showing of Boys and the Hood when a fight broke out in a mall, leading to 4 arrests. In Chicago, a 19-year-old man was stabbed by 2 people while he was leaving a theater. Then, in downtown Minneapolis, things escalated to a whole new level. A shot was fired inside a theater, likely trying to cause a riot. As chaos erupted, a car full of shooters opened fire on people running into the streets, injuring 4, 2 of them critically. It was clear, the violence was real, and it wasn't confined to just one city. Looking back, Frank Price, the chairman of Columbia Pictures who gave the green light to Boys and the Hood, had some strong thoughts to share with The Atlantic. He pointed out how quickly the media linked any violence near a theater to the movie itself, even when there was no real connection. As he put it, if anything happened within a mile of the theater, it was somehow connected to Boys and the Hood. He believed this made people feel unsafe, which hurt the movie's box office. After all, who wants to take the risk of going to a movie when they think things might get dangerous? Following all the chaos, like we've seen with other violent incidents over the years, theater security became a hot topic. As Deadline explained, theater security is usually a shared responsibility between studios and the theater chains. When a movie is expected to stir up violence, studios sometimes step in to help cover the costs of extra security. That's exactly what Columbia Pictures did with Boys and the Hood. Instead of pulling the movie from theaters, they chose to invest more in security to help keep things from spiraling out of control. Now, let's get into the story behind the iconic movie The Godfather. You might think the mobster drama is just part of the movie, but it turns out there was some real-life action going on behind the scenes. Marlon Brando, the guy who played Vito Corleone, found himself being followed by actual mobsters while they were filming. These guys weren't just casual fans or curious bystanders. They were the real deal, tied up with the underworld. So, what does Brando do? He gets fed up with them trailing him and decides to give them a taste of their own medicine. One day, when they were following him around on set, he drops his pants and moons them. I mean, can you imagine? He literally showed them his backside. It was his way of saying, "Leave me alone," with no filter. But instead of backing off, these mobsters were absolutely fuming. Like, they were genuinely offended by Brando's bold move, and you can almost picture them standing there. It's not every day that a Hollywood star takes on real-life gangsters with such audacity, and they weren't about to let it slide. They wanted revenge, and they wanted it bad. That's when Francis Ford Coppola, the mastermind behind The Godfather, came up with a clever plan. Instead of trying to get these guys off their backs with security or threats, he thought, if they're so eager to hang around the set, why not put them to work? And just like that, these mobsters found themselves cast in small roles in the film. Suddenly, the troublemakers became part of the production, which is probably one of the most unexpected solutions to a problem like this ever. It's like Coppola took a brewing disaster and flipped it into a win for everyone. And you know what? It totally worked. Once the mobsters got a taste of the Hollywood life, learning lines, hitting marks, and playing their parts, they were way too busy trying to be convincing on camera to cause any more trouble. Their beef with Brando? Forgotten. Their shadowy mischief? Gone. All they cared about was nailing their scenes, and honestly, who could blame them? They went from lurking around set to actually being a part of one of the greatest movies ever made. So in the end, Brando's gutsy move wasn't just a bold stand, it became the catalyst for one of the most creative problem-solving moments in film history. By turning a bunch of angry mobsters into actors, the filmmakers not only avoided disaster, but also made their movie that much more authentic. It's wild to think about, but behind the polished brilliance of The Godfather was a whole layer of chaos, tension, and real-life drama that somehow all came together perfectly. Next time you watch it, just imagine those mobsters living their best Hollywood dreams, all because one actor dared to stand up to them in the most unconventional way possible. Talk about a story for the ages.